There exists a moment in every galactic war when silence becomes more terrifying than the loudest bombardment, when the absence of screaming means something far worse than death is stirring in the darkness. For 17 Terran years, the scrapyard moon of Skarpit had been quiet, and that silence should have been the first warning that the galaxy was about to witness the birth of its own apocalypse. If you've ever wondered what it sounds like when reality itself begins to crack under the weight of pure, weaponized belief, subscribe now. Because in the 41st millennium, some truths are too dangerous to face alone. The first tremor wasn't felt through seismic sensors or registered on any Imperial auger array. It resonated through the warp itself, a psychic heartbeat that pulsed once, twice, then began accelerating toward something that would make the Horus heresy look like a border skirmish. Deep beneath Skarpit's towering mountains of twisted metal and broken dreams, something that had been pretending to be dead was remembering what it meant to be the galaxy's most perfect killing machine. Warboss Skarjaw's awakening began not with movement, but with a single thought that rippled across 3 star systems like a virus of pure violence. Somewhere in the debris field that had once been an Imperial cruiser, a power claw that should have been nothing but scrap metal began to hum with energy that made the air itself taste of copper and ozone. The weapon recognized its master's call, just as every piece of Ork technology across the sector suddenly, inexplicably began functioning better than it had any right to. But this wasn't just another Ork stirring from hibernation. This was the resurrection of a legend that Imperial strategists had prayed would remain buried forever. The last time Skarjaw had led a proper WAAAGH, 3 chapter masters had died trying to stop him, and entire worlds had simply vanished from Imperial records. Officially, they had been administratively reclassified. Unofficially, they had been consumed so thoroughly that even their names had been devoured. As consciousness flooded back into his massive frame like molten iron poured into a mold of living flesh, Skarjaw's first coherent thought contained enough psychic pressure to shatter the minds of lesser beings. It wasn't a word or a battle cry. It was a promise written in frequencies that made reality itself uncomfortable. Every Ork within 100 light years felt it in their bones. The biggest, baddest, most cunningly brutal warboss in the sector was awake, and he was hungry for something more satisfying than mere conquest. The scrap mountain exploded outward as he rose, but the debris didn't fall according to the laws of physics. It arranged itself into crude totems and weapon racks, responding to the subconscious will of a mind that had learned to make the universe bend through sheer, concentrated belief. Standing nearly 4 meters tall in the sick green glow of Skarpit's radioactive sky, Skarjaw was no longer quite the same creature that had gone into hibernation. Something had changed during his long sleep, evolved in ways that would make Imperial xenobiologists weep if they could comprehend the implications. His first roar shattered every piece of glass within 50 kilometers, but more disturbing than the sound was what happened to the silence that followed. It didn't return naturally. It was consumed, devoured by an psychic pressure that made the air itself seem eager for violence. Across Skarpit, Orks who had been content with small raids and petty tribal warfare suddenly found themselves thinking bigger, hungrier thoughts. Not just about conquering worlds, but about remaking entire star systems in their own brutal image. Within hours, the first crude rockets began launching from Skarpit's surface, but they weren't just carrying messages. They were carrying spores of an idea so magnificently violent that it would grow in the mind of every greenskin it touched. The concept was simple, terrible, and absolutely unprecedented in its scope. What if the next WAAAGH didn't just conquer a few worlds, but consumed the very stars themselves? As twin suns set behind the scrap heaps, painting the wasteland in shades of rust and prophecy, Warboss Skarjaw began planning something that would make the Great Crusade look like a gentle suggestion. The galaxy had grown fat and complacent in his absence. And it was time to remind the universe of a fundamental truth that every species except the Orks seemed to forget. In the grim darkness of the far future, war doesn't just happen, it evolves. And evolution, as every Ork knows, is a beautiful thing. The Great Muster began 3 days after Skarjaw's awakening, as ramshackle Ork vessels descended upon Skarpit like scavenging birds drawn to carrion. Each arriving ship brought its own warband, scarred veterans who remembered the Warboss's legendary brutality and ambitious young knobs eager to prove themselves worthy of his attention. The sound of landing thrusters and grinding metal filled the thin atmosphere as the moon's population swelled from thousands to hundreds of thousands in a matter of weeks. Skarjaw held court atop the highest scrap mountain, a throne of twisted Imperial and Xenos technology that creaked ominously under his massive weight. The seat had been hastily constructed by his personal retinue of mech boys, incorporating the command throne of a destroyed Imperial battleship, the neural crown of a fallen Tau commander, and enough weapons to outfit a small army. Power cables snaked around the makeshift throne like metallic serpents, feeding energy to the various implements of destruction welded to its arms and backrest. The first challenge came from Warboss Skarjaw, a hulking brute whose own warband controlled 3 asteroid mining colonies in the neighboring Krork system. Skarjaw's arrival had been announced by the thunderous roar of his custom-built dreadnought as it carved a smoking crater in Skarpit's surface. The rival Warboss emerged from the wreckage like something from an Imperial citizen's worst nightmare. 8 feet of muscle and scars, his bionic jaw clicking with mechanical precision as he spoke. "Skarjaw!" Skarjaw bellowed, his voice amplified by Vox grills embedded in his throat. "I heard you was back, but I didn't believe the boys. You been napping like a lazy grot while real Orks was doing real fighting." The assembled greenskins fell silent, their primitive understanding of Ork politics telling them that this moment would reshape the local balance of power. Thousands of red eyes focused on Skarjaw, waiting to see how the legendary Warboss would handle this direct challenge to his authority. In Ork society, leadership was earned through violence and maintained through the constant demonstration of superior brutality. Skarjaw's response was swift and decisive. Without rising from his throne, he activated his power claw with a thought. The weapon's energy field flared to life with a sound like tearing reality, and faster than the eye could follow, he hurled the massive claw across the 50 meters separating him from his challenger. The spinning weapon took Skarjaw's head clean off, the energy field cauterizing the wound so thoroughly that the headless body remained standing for several seconds before toppling backward. The crowd erupted in approving roars and guttural cheers. This was the Skarjaw they remembered, swift, brutal, and utterly without mercy toward those who questioned his dominance. The power claw returned to his hand with a satisfying thunk as magnetic recall systems activated, pulling it back through the air like a boomerang of death. "Any other questions?" Skarjaw asked, his voice carrying across the assembled horde without need for amplification. The silence that followed was answer enough. Over the following days, a steady stream of Ork knobs presented themselves before the throne, each offering their warband's service in exchange for the promise of glorious battle. Skarjaw listened to each with the calculating intelligence that marked him as exceptional even among Ork leaders. He understood something that many of his kind missed, that the greatest WAAAGH wasn't just about overwhelming force, but about channeling that force toward the most satisfying targets. "We ain't gonna waste time on little scraps anymore," he announced during one of his daily addresses to the growing horde. "I been dreaming while I was sleeping, and I seen something beautiful. I seen I've worlds burning. I seen space marine fortresses cracking like eggs. I seen whole systems begging for mercy that ain't never gonna come." His words sent visible ripples through the crowd. not just audibly, but psychically. The Ork collective consciousness, that strange quantum field that turned belief into reality for their species, began to resonate with his vision. Gretchen scribes hurried to record his words on crude data slates, while mech boys started sketching designs for weapons that would make such dreams possible. But Skarjaw's masterstroke came when he revealed his ultimate plan. Standing atop his throne, arms spread wide to encompass the growing fleet of Ork vessels, he painted a picture that would haunt Imperial nightmares for years to come. "We gonna show the galaxy what a real WAAAGH looks like," he roared. "Not just one world, not just one system. We gonna take 3 whole sectors and make them all green." The psychic phenomenon began as a subtle tremor in the warp, so faint that even the most sensitive Imperial astropaths dismissed it as background noise from the galaxy's countless conflicts. But on Skarpit and the surrounding Ork-held worlds, something far more tangible was manifesting. The very air seemed to thicken with aggressive potential as millions of greenskin minds focused on a single terrible concept: the coming WAAAGH. Mechboy Skarjaw's personal warphead, a grizzled Ork psyker known as Zagstruck the Green-Eyed, was the first to recognize the magnitude of what was building. Unlike his more primitive kin, Zagstruck possessed enough psychic sensitivity to perceive the invisible currents of Ork collective consciousness that flowed between worlds. Standing atop a jury-rigged observation tower constructed from salvaged Imperial cogitator banks, he watched reality itself begin to bend around his warboss's growing ambition. "Boss," Zagstruck called down to Skarjaw, his voice crackling with static discharge from the psychic energies swirling around him. "Da WAAAGH field is getting proper strong. I can see it spreading like green fire across the whole sector." The phenomenon was visible to any Ork with even a trace of psychic talent. What had begun as isolated pockets of aggressive energy around each warband was now forming into vast networks of interconnected psychic force. When an Ork on Skarpit thought about crushing Imperial skulls, his mental image was instantly shared with greenskins light years away, reinforcing their own violent fantasies and adding to the growing psychic storm. This was the true terror of an Ork WAAAGH, not just the physical threat of countless brutal warriors, but the reality-warping power of an entire species believing in the same destructive vision. Ork technology, that should have exploded on activation instead, functioned perfectly, sustained by the collective belief that it would work. Weapons cobbled together from scrap metal and wishful thinking became instruments of devastating efficiency, their destructive power limited only by their wielder's imagination. Skarjaw understood this phenomenon better than most of his kind, which was part of what made him so dangerous. Rather than simply letting the WAAAGH energy build randomly, he was actively directing it, focusing the psychic pressure of his growing horde toward specific goals. During his daily war councils, held in the shadow of his scrap heap throne, he would paint detailed pictures of the victories to come, each description adding another layer to the collective vision that was reshaping local reality. "First, we hit the border worlds," he explained to his assembled nobs, his massive finger tracing crude battle plans scratched into a salvaged Imperial blast door. "Small colonies, maybe a few guard regiments. We crush 'em fast and loud, let the whole sector know we's coming. But that ain't the real point. The real point is getting more boys." This was the insidious genius of Ork reproduction. Unlike other species that required lengthy gestation periods and complex social structures to expand their numbers, Orks literally grew from the spores released by their fallen comrades. Every world they conquered became a breeding ground for the next generation of greenskin warriors, ensuring that each victory made the subsequent battles easier to win. The psychic pressure was beginning to affect even non-Orks in the region. Imperial merchant vessels reported strange malfunctions in their Geller fields as they passed through areas of space claimed by the growing WAAAGH. Astropathic communications became increasingly unreliable, messages arriving garbled or twisted into crude Ork threats. Several isolated Imperial outposts went silent entirely, their final transmissions consisting of panicked reports about green lights in the void and the sound of massive engines approaching from impossible directions. On Skarpit itself, the effects were becoming impossible to ignore. Scrap metal was spontaneously welding itself into crude weapon shapes. Broken vehicles were reassembling themselves through no visible mechanism beyond the collective will of thousands of mech boys who believed they should work. Most disturbing of all, the planet's gravity seemed to be fluctuating in response to Ork expectations. Objects fell faster when Orks expected them to hit harder, and weapons fired with greater force when their wielders believed in their destructive power. Zagstruck's observations from his improvised tower painted an increasingly alarming picture. The WAAAGH field was expanding exponentially, its influence reaching across multiple star systems as news of Skarjaw's awakening spread through the Ork communication networks. Each new warband that pledged allegiance to the growing crusade added their psychic weight to the phenomenon, creating a feedback loop that threatened to spiral beyond anyone's control. "It's getting bigger every day, boss," Zagstruck reported during one of his evening briefings. "At this rate, the whole sector's gonna be green by day time we's ready to move. Day boys is so wound up for a fight, some of 'em is starting to glow." Skarjaw's response was a grin that revealed tusks filed to razor sharpness. The WAAAGH was growing beyond his wildest expectations, and soon it would be time to unleash it upon an unsuspecting galaxy. The Imperial border world of Kalos Prime had never been considered strategically important by the Administratum. Its classification as a Tertius-grade agricultural colony reflected its role as a minor supplier of protein rations and processed nutrients to the surrounding subsector. The Planetary Defense Force consisted of 2 undermanned PDF regiments, a handful of ancient Hydra anti-aircraft batteries, and an orbital monitoring station that hadn't been properly maintained in over a century. For the 12 million souls who called Kalos Prime home, it seemed like a quiet corner of the galaxy where the worst threat was the occasional raider band or Xenos incursion. Colonel Marius Vex of the 47th Kalos Defenders had served on 3 different worlds during his 30-year career, and he prided himself on recognizing the signs of an impending attack. The auger readings that came through the orbital station's ancient sensors on that fateful morning made his blood run cold. Where there should have been empty space, massive contacts were materializing from the warp, dozens of them, crude and angular signatures that could only mean one thing. "Orks," he whispered, the word carrying all the weight of a death sentence. The first wave hit Kalos Prime like a green avalanche. Skarjaw's advance fleet consisted of 30 ramshackle vessels, each one a patchwork of salvage technology held together by Ork engineering and sheer bloody-mindedness. The lead ship, a massive cruiser that had once been an Imperial transport vessel before being improved with enough dakka to level a city, opened fire while still in high orbit. The bombardment was as much psychological warfare as military strategy. Rather than targeting strategic installations, the Orks focused their initial barrage on population centers, their crude but devastatingly effective weapons lighting up the night sky with green fire. Each impact sent mushroom clouds of irradiated debris climbing toward the stratosphere, while the distinctive whine of Ork engines filled the air like the screams of dying worlds. Colonel Vex watched the carnage from his command bunker, buried 3 kilometers beneath the planetary capital of New Hadria. The tactical display showed incoming drop pods and assault craft, painting the entire hemisphere green with contact markers. His communications officer, a young lieutenant whose hands shook as she worked her Vox unit, looked up from her station with barely controlled terror in her eyes. "Sir, we're receiving surrender demands from the Ork fleet. They want us to come out and fight like proper warriors instead of hiding like scared grots in our holes. Tell them the Kalos defenders do not surrender to Xenos scum," Vex replied, his voice steady despite the growing din of explosions above. "And patch me through to Sector Command. They need to know what's happening here." But Sector Command was already dealing with its own problems. Across 6 different star systems, Ork advance forces were striking simultaneously, each attack perfectly timed to maximize confusion and prevent coordinated Imperial response. This wasn't the random violence typical of smaller Ork raids. This was systematic, intelligent warfare that spoke to the presence of an exceptionally cunning warboss, directing operations from afar. On Kalos Prime's surface, the PDF regiments were learning firsthand why Orks were considered one of the galaxy's most dangerous threats. The greenskins hit the ground running, their crude drop pods crashing into defensive positions with enough force to create new craters. From each smoking impact site, dozens of bellowing Ork warriors emerged, their weapons already firing and their voices raised in the terrifying war chant that gave the WAAAGH its name. Sergeant Helena Cross of the 47th's 3rd Company found herself face to face with the nightmare of Ork infantry assault. Her squad's position on Hill 347 had been carefully prepared with overlapping fields of fire, razor wire, and pre-sighted artillery coordinates. On paper, it should have been impregnable against anything short of a full regiment. In practice, it lasted exactly 17 minutes against a mob of 60 Ork boys led by a knob with a power claw. "They're not following any tactical doctrine we've seen before," she voxed to Colonel Vex as her remaining troopers fell back to secondary positions. "These Orks are coordinating their attacks, using actual strategy instead of just charging forward. And their weapons. Emperor preserve us, sir. Their weapons are working far better than they should." This was the reality of fighting an Ork WAAAGH at the height of its psychic power. Weapons that should have jammed or exploded were functioning with mechanical perfection. Vehicles cobbled together from agricultural equipment and scrap metal were moving faster and hitting harder than their construction should have allowed. Most terrifying of all, the Orks themselves seemed to be growing larger and stronger with each passing hour, fed by their collective belief in their own inevitable victory. The battle for Kalos Prime lasted 3 days. When it was over, the world's green fields had been replaced by smoking craters, and the survivors were already showing the first signs of Ork spore contamination. Colonel Vex's final transmission, sent as his bunker was overrun by howling greenskins, contained a warning that would haunt Imperial strategists for years to come. "This isn't just a raid," his voice crackled through failing Vox channels. "This is the beginning of something much larger. May the Emperor have mercy on us all." The conquest of Kalos Prime had taken 3 days. The transformation that followed would reshape the very nature of the sector for decades to come. Within hours of the last Imperial resistance being crushed, the planet's surface began to undergo changes that defied conventional understanding of biology and ecology. This was the true horror of Ork warfare, not just the destruction they brought, but the perverse fertility that followed in their wake. Mech boy Skarpit, one of Skarjaw's most trusted engineers, oversaw the initial greening process from his command post in what had once been New Hadria's planetary governor's mansion. The ornate Imperial architecture now groaned under the weight of crude Ork machinery, its marble floors scarred by the treads of heavy equipment and its crystal windows replaced with armored observation ports. Through these makeshift viewing slits, Skarpit could observe the miraculous and terrifying process of Ork reproduction in action. Where Imperial defenders had fallen during the battle, strange fungal growths were already emerging from the contaminated soil. The Ork spores, released by every greenskin who had died in the fighting, were taking root with supernatural speed. Within the first week, the growths had reached knee height. By the end of the second week, primitive Ork forms were beginning to emerge. First, the smallest Gretchen, then the more complex Snotlings, and finally, the first generation of true Ork warriors. "It's going even faster than usual, boss," Skarsnapper reported during his daily Vox link with Skarjaw. "WAAAGH energy is supercharging the whole process. We's gonna have more boys than we can count before the month is out." This acceleration was unprecedented in recorded Ork biology. Normally, the maturation process from spore to warrior could take months or even years, depending on environmental conditions. But the psychic pressure of the growing WAAAGH was compressing these timelines dramatically, the collective will of millions of greenskins somehow convincing reality that Ork reproduction should happen faster than the laws of biology normally allowed. The transformation wasn't limited to new births. Existing Ork populations throughout the sector were experiencing growth spurts that bordered on the supernatural. Warriors who had been considered average-sized were bulking up to knob proportions. Knobs were approaching the physical dimensions of warbosses. Even the lowliest Gretchen seemed to be standing taller and fighting with uncharacteristic courage, emboldened by their species' mounting psychic confidence. On Kalos Prime, the evidence was everywhere. The planet's former agricultural zones had become vast Ork settlements seemingly overnight, their crude structures rising from the earth like mushrooms after rain. Salvage teams worked around the clock to strip useful materials from Imperial infrastructure, their efficiency boosted by the strange phenomenon that allowed Ork technology to function far beyond its theoretical capabilities. Warboss Skarjaw himself had grown visibly larger since the campaign's beginning. When he stood atop his scrap-heap throne, his massive frame cast shadows that seemed to move independently of their source. His personal retinue of knobs had to be constantly reorganized as individual members grew too large for their original roles, creating a cascade effect of promotions and territorial disputes that was resolved through the traditional Ork method of brutal physical combat. The fleet grew as well. What had begun as 30 ramshackle vessels was now approaching 200 as Ork mechboys worked their inexplicable magic on captured Imperial ships and salvaged space debris. Each vessel was improved according to Ork engineering principles: more armor, more weapons, more engines, all held together by the collective belief that such modifications should work. The result was an armada that violated every known principle of spacefaring technology while somehow remaining frighteningly effective. The psychological impact on Imperial forces throughout the sector was becoming as important as the physical threat. Astropathic communications carried increasingly desperate reports of Ork sightings, equipment failures, and strange phenomena that suggested the WAAAGH's influence was spreading beyond the worlds it had physically conquered. Imperial Navy patrol vessels reported encounters with Ork forces that appeared larger and better organized than their initial intelligence estimates had suggested. Admiral Tertius Corvinus, commanding the sector's modest naval assets from his flagship, the lunar-class cruiser Righteous Fury, found himself facing an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. His intelligence reports painted an increasingly grim picture of exponential Ork expansion, sustained by resources that seemed to materialize from nowhere and organized by a strategic intelligence that challenged every assumption about greenskin capabilities. The Warboss's intelligence was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the encounter. This was no crude barbarian ruled by simple aggression. This was a strategic genius whose understanding of warfare had been enhanced by the collective wisdom of his entire species. He had anticipated their approach, prepared his defenses, and positioned himself for maximum tactical advantage. Around the bridge's perimeter, 40 elite Ork knobs stood ready, their weapons trained on the Deathwatch team with disciplined precision that would have impressed Imperial Guard sergeants. Target acquired. Watch Captain Vex subvox to his kill team, his ancient artificer armor's tactical systems, painting target markers on every enemy in the chamber. Execute Xenocide Protocol 7 for the Emperor and the Fallen of Rin's Hope. The battle erupted with the fury of a stellar explosion. Brother Scarathan's Infernus heavy bolter roared to life, its blessed ammunition designed specifically for Xenos elimination, carving through Ork armor with devastating efficiency. Brother Gazak's plasma cannon added its sun-bright fury to the assault, each shot vaporizing cubic meters of the enemy with precisely controlled stellar fire. The Deathwatch moved with the coordination of apex predators, their centuries of training allowing them to function as a single lethal organism. But Skarjaw was no ordinary opponent. The Warboss moved with impossible speed for something of his size, his massive form blurring as he charged across the bridge like a green avalanche. His power claw, enhanced by the psychic energy of his WAAAGH, punched through ceramite and adamantium with equal ease, while his roar of challenge made the ship's hull plates vibrate in sympathy. Watch Captain Vex met the charge with his master-crafted thunder hammer, the weapon crackling with disruptor fields as it struck the Warboss's power claw in a shower of sparks that illuminated the bridge like lightning. The impact sent shockwaves through the ship's superstructure, while the psychic feedback from their collision created visible distortions in the air around them. "You fight good for a little humie," Skarjaw admitted as they grappled, his massive strength forcing Vex backward despite the Space Marine's enhanced physiology. "But I got something you don't got. I got the whole WAAAGH believing in me." The Warboss's words carried literal truth. As the battle raged around them, reports flooded in from across the Ork fleet of impossible victories and reality-defying accomplishments. Ork ships were ramming Imperial vessels and emerging unscathed through sheer collective belief in their own indestructibility. Crude weapons were achieving energy outputs that exceeded their theoretical maximums. Most disturbing of all, fallen Ork warriors were somehow continuing to fight, despite wounds that should have been instantly fatal. Brother Librarian Karl extended his psychic senses and immediately understood the true scope of their enemy. "Brothers, the Warboss is not just drawing power from his immediate followers. He's channeling the psychic energy of the entire WAAAGH. His strength increases with every victory his forces achieve." The revelation changed the tactical equation dramatically. This wasn't just a decapitation strike against an enemy leader. This was a battle against a creature that was being sustained by the collective will of millions of greenskins across multiple star systems. Every Imperial defeat, every Ork victory, every act of violence committed in the WAAAGH's name was feeding power directly into their opponent. Watch Sergeant Corvinus, his Raven Guard training allowing him to move unseen through the chaos of combat, positioned himself for a precise strike at Skarjaw's exposed flank. His power weapon, blessed by the finest artificers of the Deathwatch armory, struck true, but instead of penetrating the Warboss's hide, it merely scored a shallow cut that leaked green ichor while Skarjaw laughed with genuine amusement. "That all you got?" the Warboss taunted, his free hand backhanding Corvinus with enough force to send the Space Marine crashing through a bank of crude Ork cogitators. "I've been getting stronger every day, and you beakies is still just the same old tin soldiers." The battle raged for what felt like hours, the Deathwatch using every tactic in their considerable arsenal against an opponent who seemed to grow more powerful with each passing moment. Watch Captain Vex felt his ancient artificer armor beginning to buckle under the relentless assault, while his Thunderhammer's power cells showed dangerous levels of depletion from repeated impacts against the Warboss's seemingly invulnerable hide. But even as the situation grew increasingly desperate, Vex noticed something that gave him hope. The green tint that had been spreading across the system was beginning to fluctuate, its steady pulse interrupted by moments of normal stellar radiation. Somewhere in the void around them, the diversionary fleet was achieving tactical success. disrupting the psychic network that fed power to their massive opponent. The death of Warboss Skarjaw came not with the dramatic explosion expected of such a titanic figure, but with a moment of profound silence that rippled across multiple star systems. Watch Captain Vex's final strike, delivered with a thunder hammer whose power cells had been overcharged beyond safety parameters, found its mark at the precise instant when Admiral Corvanis's diversionary fleet destroyed the WAAAGH's primary communication hub. For one critical second, the psychic network that sustained the massive warboss flickered, and in that moment of vulnerability, blessed adamantium met green flesh with decisive finality. Skarjaw's massive form crashed backward into his throne of twisted metal, his power claw sparking as its energy field collapsed. But even as his life ebbed away, the warboss's scarred features twisted into something that might have been a smile. You think this is over, Beaky? He wheezed, green ichor flowing from wounds that would have killed a dozen normal orcs. You don't understand. WAAAGH. It ain't about me anymore. It's bigger than any one boss. His final words carried a terrible prophecy that Watch Captain Vex understood with the clarity of despair. Around them, the orc knobs, who had fought with fanatical devotion moments before, were already beginning to turn on each other, their crude unity fracturing into the tribal warfare that traditionally followed a warboss's death. But in the distance, visible through the bridge's massive viewing ports, green lights continued to burn across the conquered systems like funeral pyres that refused to die. The immediate aftermath seemed to justify the Deathwatch's desperate gambit. Across the Orc fleet, communication networks fell silent as individual ship commanders began asserting their own authority over whatever forces they could control. The massive coordination that had made the WAAAGH so devastating began to collapse into dozens of smaller conflicts as ambitious knobs fought for the right to claim Skarjaw's mantle. The green tide that had seemed unstoppable was fragmenting into manageable threats that could be dealt with through conventional Imperial tactics. But the victory proved incomplete in ways that would haunt Imperial strategists for decades to come. The worlds that had fallen to the WAAAGH remained thoroughly transformed, their surfaces covered with orc settlements and their ecosystems permanently contaminated with greenskin spores. Kalos Prime, Ferrum Tertius, and a dozen other conquered planets would continue spawning new generations of orc warriors for centuries, regardless of who claimed leadership over them. More disturbing still were the reports from Imperial psychers across multiple sectors of ongoing reality distortions in areas where the WAAAGH had achieved its greatest successes. The psychic energy that had been unleashed during the campaign's peak had left permanent scars in the fabric of space-time, creating zones where orc belief continued to influence physical laws long after the original believers had moved on to new battles. Watch Captain Vex stood among the wreckage of the Skull Smasher's command bridge, his ancient armor scarred by combat against one of the most dangerous Xenos leaders in recorded history. Around him, his surviving battle brothers collected gene seed from their fallen comrades while preparing demolition charges that would ensure the enemy flagship could never be used again. But even as they achieved tactical victory, the strategic situation remained grim. "Brother Captain," reported Watch Sergeant Corvanis, his voice carrying the exhaustion of warriors who had pushed themselves beyond normal human limits. Long-range auguries detect 17 separate orc fleets departing the system. They're fragmenting along tribal lines, but each group retains enough strength to threaten entire subsectors. The fragmentation was both blessing and curse. No single orc force now possessed the overwhelming power that Skarjaw had wielded at his peak, but the threat had multiplied into dozens of smaller, but still dangerous enemies scattered across Imperial space. Each departing warband carried with them the knowledge and technology developed during the WAAAGH's expansion, making them more sophisticated opponents than traditional orc raiders. 3 months after Skarjaw's death, the true scope of the transformation became clear. Imperial reconnaissance forces reported Ork settlements on over 40 worlds, most of them former Imperial territories that would require massive military campaigns to reconquer. The green tide had carved a permanent scar across 3 sectors, leaving behind a legacy of destruction and contamination that would influence galactic politics for generations. On the forge world of Lucius Metallurgicus, now partially under Ork control, tech priest Dominus Krasin observed the ongoing changes with mechanical fascination and organic horror. The Orks had somehow learned to replicate certain aspects of Imperial technology, creating hybrid devices that combined greenskin engineering with corrupted Imperial designs. Their weapons were becoming more sophisticated, their vehicles more reliable, and their tactical thinking more complex. "The enemy has evolved," he reported to Sector Command through heavily encrypted channels. This was not merely a military campaign. It was an educational experience that has elevated Ork capabilities across multiple disciplines. Future encounters will require revised tactical doctrines and enhanced countermeasures. But perhaps the most ominous sign came from the Outer Rim territories, where Imperial merchant vessels reported sightings of new Ork fleets bearing crude banners that proclaimed allegiance to "Da Next Big WAAAGH." The seeds scattered by Skarjaw's death were already taking root in fertile ground, tended by ambitious young war bosses who had learned valuable lessons from their predecessors' successes and failures. In the darkness between stars, where the light of the Emperor's grace barely penetrated the void, green engines burned with renewed fury as the scattered children of the great WAAAGH began planning their own campaigns of conquest. The galaxy had been reminded once again that in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and the Orks would always be ready to provide it. In the years that followed Warboss Skarjaw's death, Imperial historians would struggle to categorize the events that had consumed 3 sectors and reshaped the balance of power across dozens of star systems. What had begun as a routine Ork incursion had evolved into something unprecedented, a WAAAGH that transcended traditional military classification to become a force of nature that rewrote the fundamental rules of warfare itself. The statistical cost defied comprehension. 47 Imperial worlds lost to direct conquest, with 18 more suffering such severe damage that they required centuries of rebuilding before they could contribute meaningfully to the Imperium's war effort. Conservative estimates placed civilian casualties at over 200 billion souls, while military losses included entire guard regiments, space marine companies, and naval battle groups that had served with distinction for millennia. But numbers alone could not capture the true transformation that the WAAAGH had wrought upon the galaxy. The Orks had proven that reality itself was malleable when enough minds believed in the same impossible vision. Their crude technology had not simply functioned despite violating physical laws. It had forced those laws to bend around greenskin expectations, creating precedents that would influence Xenos warfare for millennia to come. Watch Captain Vex, now elevated to Watch Commander status in recognition of his successful elimination of an extremis-level threat, understood better than most the incomplete nature of their victory. From his new command aboard the battle barge Eternal Vigilance, he monitored intelligence reports that painted an increasingly complex picture of post-WAAAGH Ork activity. The enemy had not been defeated, merely dispersed into smaller, more cunning threats that carried with them the lessons learned during their species' greatest campaign. The green tide had taught the galaxy that Orks were capable of strategic thinking, technological innovation, and coordinated military operations on a scale previously thought impossible. Worse still, they had demonstrated an ability to attract chaos allies and manipulate reality through collective psychic pressure, The implications would reshape Imperial doctrine for generations. On the conquered worlds where Ork spores continued their eternal cycle of growth and warfare, new generations of green-skin warriors emerged with capabilities that exceeded their predecessors. They built better weapons, organized more effective military units, and dreamed of even greater campaigns than the one that had given them birth. Each world lost to the WAAAGH became a breeding ground for future threats that would test the Imperium's resilience in ways that traditional enemies never could. The Chaos forces that had allied with Skarjaw's WAAAGH scattered to pursue their own dark agendas, but they too carried lessons learned from their temporary cooperation with the Greenskins. The precedent had been set. Under the right circumstances, the galaxy's greatest threats could work together toward mutual goals. The next great enemy to threaten Imperial space might well combine Ork numbers, chaos corruption, and alien cunning into an alliance that dwarfed any single species' capabilities. Yet, in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, hope endured in the hearts of those who served the Golden Throne. The Deathwatch had proven that even the mightiest Xenos leaders could be brought low by courage, skill, and unwavering faith in the Emperor's protection. Imperial Guard regiments, Space Marine chapters, and naval battle groups had fought with distinction against impossible odds, their sacrifice buying time for humanity's continued survival in a hostile galaxy. And in the deepest forges of Mars, tech priests labored to understand the reality-warping technologies they had witnessed, seeking ways to defend against psychic manipulation of physical laws. The Imperium would adapt, as it always had, transforming the lessons of defeat into weapons for future victory. The green tide had receded, but like all tides, it would return. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, new war bosses were rising to unite the scattered tribes. New fleets were taking shape in hidden shipyards built from the bones of conquered worlds. The next WAAAGH was already beginning, fed by the dreams of violence that pulsed through every greenskin heart. In the Emperor's name, humanity would be ready. The monastery's tactical situation was grim, but not hopeless. 230 Space Marines of the Crimson Fists held the ancient fortress, supported by the local PDF regiment and several companies of hardened Imperial Guard veterans who had managed to evacuate from conquered worlds. Their weapons were blessed by the chapter's chaplains, their armor consecrated with oils blessed by the Emperor himself. But the enemy they faced defied conventional military logic. Below them, the Ork horde had grown to an estimated 2 million warriors, their crude camps stretching beyond the horizon in all directions. What made the sight truly terrifying wasn't just the numbers, it was the organization. Traditional Ork mobs were chaotic affairs, held together by the personal magnetism of individual nobs and bosses. This army moved with purpose and coordination that spoke to the presence of an exceptionally cunning controlling intelligence. Brother Librarian Cordus, the fortress's chief psyker, had been monitoring the psychic emanations from the Ork force for 3 days straight. His reports painted an increasingly disturbing picture of an enemy whose very presence was warping local reality. The WAAAGH field is stronger than anything in our combat records, he reported during the morning strategy session. Their collective belief is so intense that it's actually suppressing our own psychic abilities while enhancing theirs. The first major assault came at dawn on the 4th day of siege. Skarjaw had planned his attack with the kind of tactical sophistication that Imperial commanders associated with veteran guard generals, not Xeno's barbarians. Artillery bombardments preceded infantry advances, air support coordinated with ground assaults, and diversionary attacks masked the main effort's true objectives. This wasn't the random violence of typical Ork warfare. This was military genius applied with green-skinned brutality. Captain Pollux watched through his helmet's tactical display as wave after wave of Ork boys charged across the killing fields surrounding the monastery. The defenders' response was everything the Imperial military machine could offer: coordinated bolter fire from Space Marine positions, heavy weapon support from guard units, and blessed ammunition that had been sanctified for use against Xenos threats. By all tactical calculations, the assault should have been shattered within minutes. Instead, the Orks absorbed casualties that would have broken any normal force and kept coming. Warriors who should have been killed by direct bolter hits continued fighting with gaping wounds that leaked green ichor, but somehow failed to stop them. Their crude weapons fired with accuracy and reliability that defied their ramshackle construction, while their war cries grew louder and more confident with each step closer to the fortress walls. The breakthrough came when Warboss Skarjaw himself led the final assault wave. His massive form, now grown to truly enormous proportions through the psychic enhancement of his followers' belief, smashed through the outer defensive line like it was made of parchment. His power claw, crackling with barely contained energy, punched through ceramite and adamantium with equal ease, while his roar of triumph echoed across the battlefield. Sergeant Huron and his tactical squad made their stand at the monastery's main gate, their red and yellow armor gleaming with the oils of consecration as they prepared to sell their lives dearly. The Space Marines' training and equipment were superior to anything the Orks could field, but they were facing enemies whose very existence challenged the laws of physics and biology. "For Dawn and the Emperor!" Huron bellowed as the first Ork nobs reached his position. His chainsword roared to life, its blessed blade carving through green flesh and crude armor with surgical precision. Around him, his battle brothers fought with the disciplined fury that had made the Adeptus Astartes the Imperium's finest warriors for 10,000 years. The battle raged for 18 hours straight. When the monastery finally fell, it was not through superior Ork tactics or overwhelming force, but through the simple reality that even Space Marines could not fight indefinitely against an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. Captain Pollux' final transmission, sent as Ork warriors overran the chapter's sacred halls, carried a warning that would haunt Imperial strategists for years to come. The enemy we face is not the Orks of historical record. They have become something new, something that transcends conventional military threat assessment. May the Emperor preserve those who face them next. Of the 230 Crimson Fists who had defended Rin's Hope, fewer than 30 survived to be evacuated by emergency extraction. Their defeat marked the end of organized Imperial resistance in the Rin's Hope system and opened the path for the WAAAGH's expansion into the sector's core worlds. The first signs of Chaos involvement came as reports of impossible phenomena filtering through the surviving Imperial communication networks. On the world of Sacrament 7, 3 sectors away from the main WAAAGH front, Planetary Governor Mordian Hex transmitted increasingly frantic reports of green lightning storms that left behind crystalline formations, spelling out blasphemous words in the ancient Colchizian script. On Perdition's Gate, an industrial world that had never seen Ork raiders, workers reported finding crude Ork glyphs carved into factory walls that had stood unmarked for centuries. The truth was far more sinister than simple psychic contamination. In the eye of terror, ancient powers had taken notice of the growing WAAAGH, recognizing in its brutal simplicity an opportunity to advance their own eternal war against the Corpse Emperor's crumbling realm. Khorne, the blood god, found particular satisfaction in the endless carnage that followed in Skarjaw's wake, while Tzeentch delighted in the impossible nature of Ork technology that defied all logical explanation. Chaos, Lord Vex Machinator of the Iron Warriors, had been conducting his own campaign against Imperial forces in the neighboring Cyclops sector when astropathic reports of the WAAAGH reached his attention. The former warsmith, his power armor a patchwork of ancient ceramite and demon-forged metal, saw opportunity in the Green Tide's advance. Where the Orks conquered, Imperial defenses were weakened. Where Imperial forces concentrated to face the Ork threat, other worlds lay vulnerable to Chaos assault. The Greenskins serve our purposes without knowing it, Machinator explained to his assembled warband leaders from the bridge of his corrupted battle barge, Inevitable Corruption. Let them break the Loyalists' strength, and we shall feast on the remnants. But the relationship between Chaos and the WAAAGH proved more complex than simple opportunism. The psychic energy generated by millions of battle-hungry Orks was creating ripples in the warp that attracted demonic attention across vast distances. Bloodletters manifested spontaneously on battlefields where Ork and Imperial forces clashed, their brass blades thirsting for the carnage that both sides provided in abundance. Sentient horrors appeared in the wake of impossible Ork technology, drawn by the reality-warping effects of green skin engineering that somehow functioned despite violating every natural law. The convergence reached its apex above the forge world of Lucius Metallurgicus, where Skarjaw's fleet encountered Chaos Lord Machinator's warband in what should have been a catastrophic three-way battle between Orks, Chaos Space Marines, and Imperial defenders. Instead, the meeting produced something that horrified Imperial observers and delighted the Dark Gods in equal measure. Warboss Skarjaw, his massive intellect enhanced by the psychic pressure of his WAAAGH, recognized opportunity when he saw it. Rather than immediately attacking the Chaos vessels, he opened communication channels with a proposal that demonstrated the terrifying evolution of Ork strategic thinking. "Hello, spiky boys," Skarjaw's crude Gothic echoed across Vox channels as his flagship, the Skull Smasher, held position just outside weapons range. "I got a proposition for you. There's plenty of Imperials to go around, and killing each other just means less fun for everybody." Chaos. Lord Machinator's response revealed the pragmatic evil that made Chaos Space Marines so dangerous. "Speak your terms, Greenskin. The Iron Warriors are not opposed to temporary arrangements when they serve our purposes. The alliance that followed was loose, informal, and based entirely on mutual benefit rather than genuine cooperation. Ork forces would assault Imperial strongholds from one direction, while Chaos Marines struck from another, dividing enemy attention and making coordinated defense impossible. Neither side trusted the other, but both recognized the tactical advantages of fighting alongside rather than against such powerful allies. The psychological impact on Imperial forces was devastating. Facing Orks was one thing. They were a known threat with established countermeasures and tactical doctrines. Facing Chaos, Space Marines required entirely different strategies and specialized equipment. Facing both simultaneously stretched Imperial resources beyond their breaking point and forced commanders to make impossible choices about resource allocation. On the hive world of Sanctity's End, this unholy alliance achieved its most devastating success. Chaos forces, led by the fallen Terminator Squad Damnation's Edge, assaulted the planet's orbital defense stations, while Skarjaw's fleet bombarded surface installations. Imperial Navy vessels attempting to respond to the Chaos threat found themselves caught between enemy forces on multiple vectors, their superior technology negated by simple numerical disadvantage. The battle's climax came when Chaos sorcerer Malakar the Forsaken attempted to summon a greater demon of Tzeentch to the battlefield, using the psychic energy of the WAAAGH as fuel for his ritual. What emerged from the resulting warp rift was something that had never been seen before. A demon prince whose form combined elements of both chaos corruption and orc brutality, its brass and iron frame crackling with green energy, while its multiple mouths roared both blasphemous litanies and crude orc war chants. Imperial Inquisitor Cassandra Vex, monitoring the battle from her strike cruiser Purifying Light, transmitted a priority alert to Sector Command that would reshape Imperial understanding of the threat they faced. The enemy has evolved beyond our tactical parameters. We are no longer facing separate threats that can be dealt with individually. The WAAAGH has attracted Chaos attention, and their cooperation represents an existential threat to Imperial control over multiple sectors. The green tide was no longer just consuming worlds. It was serving as a catalyst for forces that threatened the very foundations of Imperial civilization. Reality itself began to fracture along the borders of the expanding WAAAGH as the psychic pressure of millions of combat-hungry Orks reached critical mass. What had begun as simple equipment malfunctions and minor reality distortions was escalating into phenomena that challenged the fundamental laws of physics throughout multiple star systems. Imperial tech priests on the forge world of Omnissiah's Blessing reported chronometer malfunctions where time moved faster in areas with high Ork presence, while astropaths across 3 sectors experienced synchronized visions of green fire consuming the stars themselves. Archmagos Dominus Vex 77, the senior tech priest responsible for monitoring warp phenomena in the Hector sector, stood before a massive cogitator array in the heart of his forge cathedral, its mechanical chanting replaced by crude orc war songs that emerged from speakers that had been silent for millennia. His augmetic eyes processed data streams that defied rational analysis, energy readings that fluctuated wildly based on orc expectations, gravitational anomalies that bent space around green-painted objects, and quantum resonance patterns that spelled out WAAAGH in binary cant. The Greenskin collective consciousness has achieved synchronization across multiple dimensions, he reported to the Sector Defense Council via heavily encrypted Vox transmission. Their belief in their own inevitability is becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy on a scale that transcends mere psychological warfare. The most dramatic manifestation occurred in the Kronos system, where Warboss Skarjaw had concentrated nearly 4 million Ork warriors for a massive assault on the sector capital. As the green tide prepared for battle, something unprecedented happened. The very fabric of space-time began to bend around their collective will. Stars shifted slightly in their orbits, drawn toward the massive concentration of psychic energy. Asteroids spontaneously developed crude orc faces carved into their surfaces. Most disturbing of all, the system's primary star began pulsing with a distinctly green tint that made Imperial astrophysicists question their fundamental understanding of stellar mechanics. Sister Dialogus Seraphina of the Order of the Sacred Rose, monitoring warp communication from the sanctified chambers of her convent ship, recorded phenomena that would be classified as heretical if they hadn't been corroborated by dozens of independent sources. Her augmetic Vox transcriber, blessed by Cardinal Voss himself, began producing orc battle chants in perfect High Gothic, despite receiving no external transmission signals. The enemy's psychic field is so intense that it's bleeding through into consecrated spaces, she reported to her sister superior. Even our sacred relics are showing signs of contamination. The skull of Saint Mercutius began growing tusks during morning prayers. On the battlefield itself, the effects were even more pronounced. Orc weapons were firing ammunition that materialized from pure psychic energy, bullets made of crystallized aggression that punched through Imperial armor with impossible force. Their vehicles were running on fuel that consisted entirely of their drivers' enthusiasm for violence, while their communication systems carried messages faster than light by simply assuming that important information should travel at the speed of anger. The phenomenon reached its apex when Zagstruck the Green-Eyed, Skarjaw's chief warphead, attempted to focus the entire WAAAGH's psychic energy into a single devastating attack against the Imperial stronghold of Fortress Invincible. Standing atop a pile of wrecked Imperial tanks, his scarred form crackling with green lightning, the Orc Psyker began channeling power that exceeded anything in recorded Imperial history. "Wah!" Zagstruck bellowed, his voice carrying across multiple dimensions as psychic energy exploded outward from his position. The blast wave was visible to the naked eye, a wall of green fire that swept across the battlefield, transforming everything it touched according to Orc expectations of how reality should function. Imperial tanks struck by the wave suddenly sprouted additional weapons and armor plating, their machine spirits overwhelmed by aggressive Orc programming that made them faster, louder, and more destructive. Guardsmen caught in the energy field found their laser guns spontaneously upgrading to heavy weapons that fired with the sound of roaring beasts. Most terrifying of all, several Imperial soldiers began developing distinctly Orc-like characteristics. Enlarged canine teeth, increased muscle mass, and an irresistible urge to paint their equipment in garish colors. The psychic backlash from Zagstruck's attack created a temporary rift in the warp that allowed observers to see directly into the realm of chaos. What they witnessed defied description. Vast demon legions marching in perfect synchronization with Orc war chants, their blasphemous banners bearing crude Orc glyphs alongside traditional chaos symbols. The ruinous powers themselves seemed to be taking direct interest in the WAAAGH's progress, seeing in its reality warping effects an opportunity to advance their eternal war against the material universe. Inquisitor Lord Mordian Thrax, commanding the Hector Sector's Ordo Xenos operations from his heavily shielded battle barge, transmitted an emergency alert to the High Lords of Terror that carried the highest possible classification level. His message was brief but chilling in its implications. The WAAAGH has transcended conventional threat parameters. We are witnessing the birth of a new form of psychic warfare that threatens not just Imperial territory, but the stability of reality itself. As reports flooded in from across the sector, a terrifying pattern emerged. The green tide wasn't just conquering worlds. It was remaking the very laws of physics in its wake, creating zones where Orc belief had more impact on material reality than objective scientific fact. The war for the Hector sector was becoming something unprecedented in Imperial history, a conflict where the enemy's very existence was warping the nature of reality itself. The Deathwatch strike force Umbral Retribution translated from the warp at the edge of the Kronos system with the silence of apex predators stalking their prey. Watch Captain Thaddeus Vex, a veteran of 3 centuries of Xenos warfare, stood in the ship's observation deck, watching the green-tinted star that had once been Kronos Prime through tactical displays that showed impossible energy readings. His kill team consisted of the Imperium's finest Xenos hunters, space marines drawn from a dozen different chapters, each one a master of alien warfare with decades of experience fighting the galaxy's most dangerous threats. "Target confirmed," reported Watch Sergeant Corvanis, his Raven Guard heritage evident in the economical precision of his movements as he studied intelligence reports from surviving Imperial forces. Warboss Skarjaw, designated extremist-level threat by the Ordo Xenos. Current location, the converted hive ship Skull Smasher, positioned at the heart of the Ork fleet. The mission was brutally simple in concept, impossibly dangerous in execution. While the surviving Imperial Navy forces engaged the Ork fleet in a diversionary assault, the Deathwatch would use their specialized equipment and centuries of experience to penetrate the enemy flagship, locate the warboss, and eliminate the controlling intelligence behind the WAAAGH. Cut off the head, and the massive Ork war machine would collapse into the chaotic infighting that traditionally followed the death of a dominant leader. Brother Mordius of the Ultramarines checked his Stalker pattern bolter one final time, each blessed round inscribed with micro-psalms designed specifically for Xenos elimination. "Brother Captain, intelligence reports suggest the target has grown beyond normal Ork physiology. Estimated height, 4.5 meters. Enhanced musculature consistent with prolonged psychic amplification." "Then we use the heavy weapons," Watch Captain Vex replied, with the grim satisfaction of a warrior who had faced impossible odds countless times before. His artificer armor bore the kill markings of 17 different Xenos species, including a hive tyrant whose chitin formed decorative elements on his shoulder guards. "Brother Scarathan, prepare the Infernus heavy bolter. Brother Gazak, ready the plasma cannon." The infiltration began during the height of the diversionary battle, when Admiral Corvanis's surviving Imperial vessels launched their desperate assault against the Ork fleet. The Umbral Retribution used the chaos of void combat to approach the massive Skull Smasher undetected, her advanced stealth systems bending light and sensor waves around her sleek hull. As they drew closer to the converted battleship, the Deathwatch could see the impossible modifications that Ork engineering had wrought upon the once proud Imperial vessel. The ship's hull bristled with additional weapon batteries that violated every principle of structural engineering while somehow remaining functional. Crude ramming spikes jutted from her prow like metallic tusks, while her surface was decorated with totems and trophies taken from conquered worlds. Most disturbing of all, the vessel seemed to be growing, new sections of armor plating and weapon emplacements appearing as if the ship itself was evolving in response to its crew's expectations. Brother Librarian Epistolary Call of the Blood Ravens extended his psychic senses toward the enemy vessel, and immediately recoiled from the overwhelming tide of aggressive mental energy that surrounded it. "Brothers, the psychic pressure is beyond anything in our combat records. The enemy's collective consciousness is so intense that it's creating localized reality distortions around their flagship." The boarding action began with precision demolition charges that carved through the Skull Smasher's hull like a surgeon's blade. The Deathwatch moved through the breach with the coordinated efficiency that had made them the Imperium's premier special forces unit, their movements synchronized by decades of training and enhanced by the tactical systems built into their power armor. Each Marine carried equipment specifically designed for Ork elimination. ammunition blessed against Xenos corruption, weapons modified for maximum effectiveness against greenskin physiology, and armor systems that could resist the psychic contamination that surrounded high-level Ork leaders. The ship's interior defied rational analysis. Corridors that should have led to dead ends opened onto vast chambers filled with impossible machinery. Elevators constructed from salvaged kitchen appliances carried them between decks that existed in configurations that violated the vessel's external dimensions. Most disturbing of all, the ship's crude Ork decorations seemed to be watching them, glowing eyes painted on bulkheads tracking their movement as they advanced toward the bridge. The first major resistance came from a mob of 30 Ork boys, led by a massive knob, whose power claw crackled with energy that made the air itself burn. Watch Sergeant Corvinus took point, his centuries of experience with Ork combat tactics, allowing him to predict their crude but effective fighting style. The Deathwatch response was surgical in its precision. Coordinated bolter fire that targeted weak points in Ork armor, followed by close combat specialists who exploited the brief moment of confusion to eliminate key threats. But these Orks fought with a coordination and resilience that exceeded normal parameters. Their crude weapons fired with accuracy that defied their ramshackle construction, while their warriors absorbed damage that should have been instantly fatal. The WAAAGH's psychic energy was sustaining them beyond normal biological limits, turning already dangerous opponents into nearly unstoppable killing machines. The breakthrough came when Brother Librarian Col managed to disrupt the local psychic field through a focused psychic attack that temporarily severed the Orks' connection to their collective consciousness. For 30 seconds, the enemy fought as individuals rather than as extensions of the greater WAAAGH. And in that brief window, the Deathwatch's superior training and equipment proved decisive. As they advanced toward the ship's command center, Watch Captain Vex knew they were approaching the most dangerous phase of their mission. Ahead lay Warboss Skarjaw, a creature that had grown beyond normal Ork limitations to become something approaching a living force of nature. The fate of multiple sectors hung in the balance of the confrontation to come. The command bridge of the Skull Smasher defied every principle of ship design the Deathwatch had encountered in their centuries of void warfare. What had once been the ordered cathedral space of an Imperial battleship's command center had been transformed into a crude amphitheater of scrap metal and violent ambition. Massive screens cobbled together from salvaged Imperial cogitators displayed tactical information in crude Ork glyphs, while jury-rigged communication systems crackled with reports from across the WAAAGH's expanding front lines. At the center of this mechanical chaos sat Warboss Skarjaw, and Watch Captain Vex understood immediately why intelligence had classified him as an extremis-level threat. The creature that rose from his throne of twisted metal and Imperial skulls was no longer recognizably an Ork in the traditional sense. Standing nearly 5 meters tall, his massive frame had been enhanced by the psychic energy of millions of followers until he resembled some primordial avatar of warfare itself. His power claw, crackling with barely contained energy, was the size of a rhino APC, while his scarred hide bore ritual markings that seemed to writhe and shift when observed directly. "So," Skarjaw rumbled, his voice carrying harmonics that made the Deathwatch's helmet audio dampeners screech with feedback. "Da little beakies finally found a way to me. I've been wondering when you'd show up." The Warboss's intelligence was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the encounter. This was no crude barbarian ruled by simple aggression. This was a strategic genius whose understanding of warfare had been enhanced by the collective wisdom of his entire species. He had anticipated their approach, prepared his defenses, and positioned himself for maximum tactical advantage. Around the bridge's perimeter, 40 elite Ork knobs stood ready, their weapons trained on the Deathwatch team with disciplined precision that would have impressed Imperial Guard sergeants. Target acquired. Watch Captain Vex subvox to his kill team, his ancient artificer armor's tactical systems, painting target markers on every enemy in the chamber. Execute Xenocide Protocol 7 for the Emperor and the Fallen of Rin's Hope. The battle erupted with the fury of a stellar explosion. Brother Skarjaw's Infernus heavy bolter roared to life, its blessed ammunition designed specifically for Xenos elimination, carving through Ork armor with devastating efficiency. Brother Gazak's plasma cannon added its sun-bright fury to the assault, each shot vaporizing cubic meters of the enemy with precisely controlled stellar fire. The Deathwatch moved with the coordination of apex predators, their centuries of training allowing them to function as a single lethal organism. But Skarjaw was no ordinary opponent. The Warboss moved with impossible speed for something of his size, his massive form blurring as he charged across the bridge like a green avalanche. His power claw, enhanced by the psychic energy of his WAAAGH, punched through ceramite and adamantium with equal ease, while his roar of challenge made the ship's hull plates vibrate in sympathy. Watch Captain Vex met the charge with his master-crafted thunder hammer, the weapon crackling with disruptor fields as it struck the Warboss's power claw in a shower of sparks that illuminated the bridge like lightning. The impact sent shockwaves through the ship's superstructure, while the psychic feedback from their collision created visible distortions in the air around them. "You fight good for a little humie," Skarjaw admitted as they grappled, his massive strength forcing Vex backward despite the Space Marine's enhanced physiology. "But I got something you don't got. I got the whole WAAAGH believing in me." The Warboss's words carried literal truth. As the battle raged around them, reports flooded in from across the Ork fleet of impossible victories and reality-defying accomplishments. Ork ships were ramming Imperial vessels and emerging unscathed through sheer collective belief in their own indestructibility. Crude weapons were achieving energy outputs that exceeded their theoretical maximums. Most disturbing of all, fallen Ork warriors were somehow continuing to fight, despite wounds that should have been instantly fatal. Brother Librarian Karl extended his psychic senses and immediately understood the true scope of their enemy. Brothers, the Warboss is not just drawing power from his immediate followers. He's channeling the psychic energy of the entire WAAAGH. His strength increases with every victory his forces achieve. The revelation changed the tactical equation dramatically. This wasn't just a decapitation strike against an enemy leader. This was a battle against a creature that was being sustained by the collective will of millions of greenskins across multiple star systems. Every Imperial defeat, every Ork victory, every act of violence committed in the WAAAGH's name was feeding power directly into their opponent. Watch Sergeant Corvanis, his Raven Guard training allowing him to move unseen through the chaos of combat, positioned himself for a precise strike at Skarjaw's exposed flank. His power weapon, blessed by the finest artificers of the Deathwatch armory, struck true, but instead of penetrating the Warboss's hide, it merely scored a shallow cut that leaked green ichor while Skarjaw laughed with genuine amusement. "That all you got?" the Warboss taunted, his free hand backhanding Corvanis with enough force to send the Space Marine crashing through a bank of crude Ork cogitators. "I've been getting stronger every day, and you beakies is still just the same old tin soldiers." The battle raged for what felt like hours, the Deathwatch using every tactic in their considerable arsenal against an opponent who seemed to grow more powerful with each passing moment. Watch Captain Vex felt his ancient artificer armor beginning to buckle under the relentless assault, while his Thunderhammer's power cells showed dangerous levels of depletion from repeated impacts against the Warboss's seemingly invulnerable hide. But even as the situation grew increasingly desperate, Vex noticed something that gave him hope. The green tint that had been spreading across the system was beginning to fluctuate, its steady pulse interrupted by moments of normal stellar radiation. Somewhere in the void around them, the diversionary fleet was achieving tactical success. disrupting the psychic network that fed power to their massive opponent. The death of Warboss Skarjaw came not with the dramatic explosion expected of such a titanic figure, but with a moment of profound silence that rippled across multiple star systems. Watch Captain Vex's final strike, delivered with a thunder hammer whose power cells had been overcharged beyond safety parameters, found its mark at the precise instant when Admiral Corvanis's diversionary fleet destroyed the WAAAGH's primary communication hub. For one critical second, the psychic network that sustained the massive warboss flickered, and in that moment of vulnerability, blessed adamantium met green flesh with decisive finality. Skarjaw's massive form crashed backward into his throne of twisted metal, his power claw sparking as its energy field collapsed. But even as his life ebbed away, the warboss's scarred features twisted into something that might have been a smile. You think this is over, Beaky? He wheezed, green ichor flowing from wounds that would have killed a dozen normal orcs. You don't understand. WAAAGH. It ain't about me anymore. It's bigger than any one boss. His final words carried a terrible prophecy that Watch Captain Vex understood with the clarity of despair. Around them, the orc knobs, who had fought with fanatical devotion moments before, were already beginning to turn on each other, their crude unity fracturing into the tribal warfare that traditionally followed a warboss's death. But in the distance, visible through the bridge's massive viewing ports, green lights continued to burn across the conquered systems like funeral pyres that refused to die. The immediate aftermath seemed to justify the Deathwatch's desperate gambit. Across the Orc fleet, communication networks fell silent as individual ship commanders began asserting their own authority over whatever forces they could control. The massive coordination that had made the WAAAGH so devastating began to collapse into dozens of smaller conflicts as ambitious knobs fought for the right to claim Skarjaw's mantle. The green tide that had seemed unstoppable was fragmenting into manageable threats that could be dealt with through conventional Imperial tactics. But the victory proved incomplete in ways that would haunt Imperial strategists for decades to come. The worlds that had fallen to the WAAAGH remained thoroughly transformed, their surfaces covered with orc settlements and their ecosystems permanently contaminated with greenskin spores. Kalos Prime, Ferrum Tertius, and a dozen other conquered planets would continue spawning new generations of orc warriors for centuries, regardless of who claimed leadership over them. More disturbing still were the reports from Imperial psychers across multiple sectors of ongoing reality distortions in areas where the WAAAGH had achieved its greatest successes. The psychic energy that had been unleashed during the campaign's peak had left permanent scars in the fabric of space-time, creating zones where orc belief continued to influence physical laws long after the original believers had moved on to new battles. Watch Captain Vex stood among the wreckage of the Skull Smasher's command bridge, his ancient armor scarred by combat against one of the most dangerous Xenos leaders in recorded history. Around him, his surviving battle brothers collected gene seed from their fallen comrades while preparing demolition charges that would ensure the enemy flagship could never be used again. But even as they achieved tactical victory, the strategic situation remained grim. "Brother Captain," reported Watch Sergeant Corvanis, his voice carrying the exhaustion of warriors who had pushed themselves beyond normal human limits. Long-range auguries detect 17 separate orc fleets departing the system. They're fragmenting along tribal lines, but each group retains enough strength to threaten entire subsectors. The fragmentation was both blessing and curse. No single orc force now possessed the overwhelming power that Skarjaw had wielded at his peak, but the threat had multiplied into dozens of smaller, but still dangerous enemies scattered across Imperial space. Each departing warband carried with them the knowledge and technology developed during the WAAAGH's expansion, making them more sophisticated opponents than traditional orc raiders. 3 months after Skarjaw's death, the true scope of the transformation became clear. Imperial reconnaissance forces reported Ork settlements on over 40 worlds, most of them former Imperial territories that would require massive military campaigns to reconquer. The green tide had carved a permanent scar across 3 sectors, leaving behind a legacy of destruction and contamination that would influence galactic politics for generations. On the forge world of Lucius Metallurgicus, now partially under Ork control, tech priest Dominus Krasin observed the ongoing changes with mechanical fascination and organic horror. The Orks had somehow learned to replicate certain aspects of Imperial technology, creating hybrid devices that combined greenskin engineering with corrupted Imperial designs. Their weapons were becoming more sophisticated, their vehicles more reliable, and their tactical thinking more complex. "The enemy has evolved," he reported to Sector Command through heavily encrypted channels. This was not merely a military campaign. It was an educational experience that has elevated Ork capabilities across multiple disciplines. Future encounters will require revised tactical doctrines and enhanced countermeasures. But perhaps the most ominous sign came from the Outer Rim territories, where Imperial merchant vessels reported sightings of new Ork fleets bearing crude banners that proclaimed allegiance to "Da next big WAAAGH." The seeds scattered by Skarjaw's death were already taking root in fertile ground, tended by ambitious young war bosses who had learned valuable lessons from their predecessors' successes and failures. In the darkness between stars, where the light of the Emperor's grace barely penetrated the void, green engines burned with renewed fury as the scattered children of the great WAAAGH began planning their own campaigns of conquest. The galaxy had been reminded once again that in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and the Orks would always be ready to provide it. In the years that followed Warboss Skarjaw's death, Imperial historians would struggle to categorize the events that had consumed 3 sectors and reshaped the balance of power across dozens of star systems. What had begun as a routine Ork incursion had evolved into something unprecedented, a WAAAGH that transcended traditional military classification to become a force of nature that rewrote the fundamental rules of warfare itself. The statistical cost defied comprehension. 47 Imperial worlds lost to direct conquest, with 18 more suffering such severe damage that they required centuries of rebuilding before they could contribute meaningfully to the Imperium's war effort. Conservative estimates placed civilian casualties at over 200 billion souls, while military losses included entire guard regiments, space marine companies, and naval battle groups that had served with distinction for millennia. But numbers alone could not capture the true transformation that the WAAAGH had wrought upon the galaxy. The Orks had proven that reality itself was malleable when enough minds believed in the same impossible vision. Their crude technology had not simply functioned despite violating physical laws. It had forced those laws to bend around greenskin expectations, creating precedents that would influence Xenos warfare for millennia to come. Watch Captain Vex, now elevated to Watch Commander status in recognition of his successful elimination of an extremis-level threat, understood better than most the incomplete nature of their victory. From his new command aboard the battle barge Eternal Vigilance, he monitored intelligence reports that painted an increasingly complex picture of post-WAAAGH Ork activity. The enemy had not been defeated, merely dispersed into smaller, more cunning threats that carried with them the lessons learned during their species' greatest campaign. The green tide had taught the galaxy that Orks were capable of strategic thinking, technological innovation, and coordinated military operations on a scale previously thought impossible. Worse still, they had demonstrated an ability to attract chaos allies and manipulate reality through collective psychic pressure, the implications would reshape Imperial doctrine for generations. On the conquered worlds where Ork spores continued their eternal cycle of growth and warfare, new generations of green-skin warriors emerged with capabilities that exceeded their predecessors. They built better weapons, organized more effective military units, and dreamed of even greater campaigns than the one that had given them birth. Each world lost to the WAAAGH became a breeding ground for future threats that would test the Imperium's resilience in ways that traditional enemies never could. The Chaos forces that had allied with Skarjaw's WAAAGH scattered to pursue their own dark agendas, but they too carried lessons learned from their temporary cooperation with the Greenskins. The precedent had been set. Under the right circumstances, the galaxy's greatest threats could work together toward mutual goals. The next great enemy to threaten Imperial space might well combine Ork numbers, chaos corruption, and alien cunning into an alliance that dwarfed any single species' capabilities. Yet, in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, hope endured in the hearts of those who served the Golden Throne. The Deathwatch had proven that even the mightiest Xenos leaders could be brought low by courage, skill, and unwavering faith in the Emperor's protection. Imperial Guard regiments, Space Marine chapters, and naval battle groups had fought with distinction against impossible odds, their sacrifice buying time for humanity's continued survival in a hostile galaxy. And in the deepest forges of Mars, tech priests labored to understand the reality-warping technologies they had witnessed, seeking ways to defend against psychic manipulation of physical laws. The Imperium would adapt, as it always had, transforming the lessons of defeat into weapons for future victory. The green tide had receded, but like all tides, it would return. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, new war bosses were rising to unite the scattered tribes. New fleets were taking shape in hidden shipyards built from the bones of conquered worlds. The next WAAAGH was already beginning, fed by the dreams of violence that pulsed through every greenskin heart. In the Emperor's name, humanity would be ready.